This is the Dragon Age short story, As We Fly.
The Antum will rule Antiva, and Treviso will learn to kneel.
The voice was controlled, not calm. A baritone backed by gravel, practiced at shouting down subordinates. Now, it echoed across tiled rooftops via magical projection, devices left by long-retreated empires, a daily omnipresent drone of occupation. There was a disappointment at the ease of it, from both oppressed and oppressor.
My foot is raised, Treviso. I need not lower it. Obey.
He's getting ahead of himself. Neri the Acutis, silver-haired and wiry, raced the voice across the rooftop tiles. He leapt across the gap of an alleyway and made a swift turn as he landed, catching his ebony walking stick between the clay bricks of a chimney, a demonstration telegraphed by the embroidered heraldry on his leathers. He was an old Antivan crow, descended from very nearly the oldest. The butcher taunts the nation. But we are here, greasing his foothold. Watch your own steps, Neri, smirked Noah, his sister, as she caught up to him. She was equally wiry, just as silvered, and, by her tone, unimpressed. We are not greasing anything if you fall into their arms. Her warning was punctuated by a clatter below, as a half-dozen shoulders muscled through a barricaded alley. Fast for their size.
Not fast enough,
smiled Neri.
That's why there's time for Frere. Kitham!
An Antam, ashen-skinned and large even by their standards, bellowed into the narrow alley. His horns were nearly as wide as the passage, and tipped in white and red paint, poisonous to the touch. He was no stranger to the two crows. Cathrata, the Lash, well known for his brutality since the taking of the city, halted by his call. The rest of the Antam cowered as he passed, clearly afraid of more than his rank.
They are running above, fools. Keep pace, or I flog the skin from your backs.
Neri clicked his tongue.
No surprise the butcher is cruel, if this is how his lieutenants treat their own.
Warlords rule by fear, Noah said. We know how to answer. Move! As she leapt to the next roof, she tossed a loose clay tile over the roof, and it shattered deliberately at the feet of the Antam.
There,
sneered Cathrata, his eyes on the shadows now flitting towards the city centre. As he gave chase, he barked orders.
Gather a battalion behind me. You will watch as I run down my prey.
Another half-hearted command filled the air.
Obedience will be rewarded, Treviso. We can lead, or we can crush.
At least Cathrata sounds like he enjoys it, Neri said, disappointed.
A villain who acts the part is more useful.
We are out of the rooftop, said Noah, not playing along. They had reached the end of the tightly packed mansions of central Treviso, with no more convenient tiles to leap across. Ahead was the steep drop to the canals and bridges that bordered the main market, a large communal square normally filled with merchants from across Antiva. Less so during the Antam occupation, and completely empty at this hour.
Our friend is on our heels, said Neri. Time to fly.
At the edge of the roof was a sturdy wooden post marked in black ink, the silhouette of a crow, wings spread. Hard to see if you didn't know what to look for, but very useful if you did. Anchored at the top of the post was a thin cable that continued into the twilight, angled down towards one of the bridges below. Neri pulled a leather strap from his arm and wrapped it around the line.
"Ready?"
"Always," Noah said, grasping his waist. They kicked against the post and out into open air, sliding down the cable. Their combined weight made for a fast descent. They crossed the gap between the mansion and the stone bridge well ahead of the Antarm, but landed hard. Noah rolled into a ready crouch, while Neri struggled to find his feet, propping his cane beneath him.
"My knees are not what they once were,"
he grimaced. "It is pronounced old."
"I am 2 years your junior."
"I was not remarking on the number."
"Behave, Treviso, and rewards will follow. You want me to remain generous."
"Well," said Noah, pulling her brother up, "shall we show them how we behave?" Neri nodded, and they rushed across the bridge. But as they passed the large ornate portcullis at the market end, he appeared to stumble and dropped to one knee. Noah grabbed at his arm, but she couldn't seem to find purchase. They looked suddenly helpless, as though not just the Antarm, but every one of their years had caught up to them. Cathrata reached the open end of the bridge and stared daggers at the two crows. He smiled and signalled for his men to halt, making a show of raising his war hammer to his shoulder, emphasizing its weight.
"Out of breath,"
he called.
"Or out of time, like your city. And soon, the world."
He looked back, as though making sure his subordinates were watching, and began to charge across the bridge. He laughed and raised his hammer high. Neri and Noah watched from their side of the portcullis, a portcullis marked with black ink, with the small silhouette of a crow, wings spread. Hard to see if you didn't know where to look, but very useful if you did. Equally hard to see were the two looped cables on the ground in front of them, the same sort of strong line that had just held their weight. But the ends of these cables were not anchored to a convenient rooftop. They trailed to the top of the portcullis and wound among the gears. Noah counted Cathrata's steps, measured his speed, and the instant the Antarm crossed below the portcullis, she kicked at the lever that held it aloft, just a hair shy of perfect. As the iron gate dropped, the cables were pulled with it, whipping up from the ground. One caught Cathrata's right arm, forcing his hammer back. The second snapped across his lower torso. There was a surprisingly quiet moment as Cathrata's charge was halted. A silent instant before he could cry out, allowing the hollow sound of yielding bone to snap across the canals. The lash was lashed. Cathrata gasped, the air forced from his lungs as he slammed back against the falling gate. His men ran up to the other side. Their path was blocked by the closing portcullis and their own swearing leader.
"Lift it!"
he yelled.
"Hold it!"
The cables strained, cutting him off, digging into his ribs and threatening to raise him off his feet by a backward twisting arm. Several hands grasped at the gate and managed to stop it from dropping completely. With a heave, the Lash's men brought it to chest height, and their leader had his footing, though he was still bound. Neri stood and casually straightened out the leather on the arm that Noah had so dramatically grabbed. Cathrata glared.
"A lie,"
he sneered.
"The crows are liars."
"Performers," corrected Noah. "There is a difference."
"So I am caught,"
said the Lash.
"What do you think this will accomplish? Butcher Cathrata holds your city, and every Kitham is held by another as strong as me, and soon stronger."
He was chuckling, as if defiance could only be a joke. More of his men gathered on the other side of the bridge, several dozen nearing the gate, ready to fully raise it.
Whoever signed my name on your assassin's contract, they sent you on a fool's errand.
You're, said Neri, cocking his head.
You're not the contract.
An explosion echoed through the city, not within sight, not even close. It was at the gate where the Antam were garrisoned, where Cathrata the Lash was garrisoned. You're the distraction, Noah finished. The distant voice returned to the air, but now it seemed invested, perhaps even excited.
Antam! The crows show their talents. Return to expel them on my order.
The Antam rushing the bridge stopped, confused. They appeared worried about who to obey, the distant warlord or their bound lieutenant.
Go on then,
said Neri, waving them away dismissively.
You heard the butcher.
And you heard Cathrata, added Noah. There are others just as strong as him, and they are not on the lash. Her words caused a ripple among the Antam, a release. He'd commanded through fear, and now it was gone. The Antam next in rank, presumably, next to take command, signalled for the rest to turn and follow. The ones holding the portcullis were the last to go. They looked at the crows, at their bound leader, and they released their grip to join their fellows.
"Cowards! Traitors!"
bellowed Cathrata.
"I will see you flay the—"
Heavy iron dropped, followed by Cathrata's hammer, his arm no longer capable of holding it. He was dragged up until tight against the opening that allowed the cables to enter the workings of the portcullis. He strained against the gears, but every breath let the cables pull tighter. Gradually, inevitably, the gates met the ground, and Cathrata the Lash was left raised where the crows could peck at his eyes. Come the morning, so would the birds. The day was bright, the market busy, and the cafe buzzing about the events of the night before.
Did you hear? Did you see? They're still out there. They're fighting for us.
Neri and Noah Deactuis sipped a Mazza and let the excitement of the assembled Trevesians wash over them. Do you know who picked up the contract? Noah asked.
No,
said Neri.
Another crow. Or a friend. Someone better at scaling walls.
He patted his cane and took a long drink.
A game for the young.
The butcher continues his daily droning, said Noah, stirring an alarming amount of sugar into her drink. But we gave him pause. Half his strange weapons up in flames.
He'll replace them, but not without effort.
Neri sat back thoughtfully.
If we weaken the occupation, back the whole thing into a corner. When the butcher's name is finally on the contract, there will be no pretenders to take his place.
Pity, said Noah, smiling across her drink. I'd enjoy killing a few pretenders. Neri smiled back.
Noted. But until then, we craft our message to answer theirs.
He raised his cup.
The crows rule Antiva.
Noah answered with her own. And Treviso will be free.